Marty, how are you? Good, man.
It's 11 o'clock.
So,
I don't think I need to use the microphones. I think you can hear me. Welcome, everyone. We have a gentleman from a contracting company that is doing the work, and I think the roofs in Section 4 are moving along rather well. He'll explain everything about the roofs and finishing them up and get to that. One thing I'd like to do is he's going to give a little presentation, then we'll open it up to questions and answers. This is Section 4. We're not like those other meetings where people get up, yell, scream, and holler. We're here for questions and answers, not for finger pointing, not for interrogations. Nice, polite, ladies and gentlemen. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been allowed to buy in Section 4. All right. With that, I'll turn it over to Marty, and he will get us up to date.
There's a number of you I've met, in and out of the trailer over the past several weeks, and I'm, getting to where I'm spending more and more time out there. When I was given the project, as I've said before, I was coming from off another couple projects, and all of a sudden the bomb dropped. The glades, and trying to catch up on what was going on since the 1st of December, what's been done, what isn't done, other permitting issues and things to, again, other contractors being involved. It was a fast-paced learn process that became very arduous, with over 150 permits out there for other contractors, which we're currently closing out. Some of the delays that took place was the process of closing those out because there had to be inspections. And what the county was trying to do was to determine what work had actually been done in the units versus permits that were pulled to where there was units that had to have no damage. So we had to go both directions. The inspector to validate there was no damage, and then the inspector to sit back and validate what damages were there and what the scope of that was. You've all heard the term, the 50% rule. It was something that as soon as we were on site in December, that was a bomb that we, sadly had to drop on everybody here, because it is real. And it comes down to the values of the properties, which is on this document right here. It tells you what your building is worth as well as the units. And the county wanted these. So the 50% rule, for example, and on the other side of it, it tells me what damages are in them. So that will give me an idea of what the valuation of the cost is. It's the reason why that the Architectural Review Board is passing everything through us. Also the reason why the county is calling us if there's a permit that's been applied for. Tilting that rule is not a good idea because simply it would mean one of two things. The building would have to come down, or the other term in raise means it would have to raise up above flood elevation, and there are no buildings out here that fit that criteria. So with this task, we were given two options on the 50%, or we have two portions of a 50% rule. The structural integrity of the building, or the cost valuation of the building. We walk into a building and all 4 units are gutted. Okay, now we need to make a determination on the structural integrity of the building. The county doesn't want to tear down anything. So we get the slide rules out and we end up going back into trig a little bit. We get into some simple math. It comes back to the repair of the units. And in no event can we exceed 50% of that. So if everything's gone, we have to be able to convince FEMA that the integrity is less than 50% compromised. So that's where the challenge becomes. We have to use the thickness of the walls that are there and what percentage of that's an 8-inch wall. We're going back over with a 1/2-inch drywall. It has the furring in it. In our world, that wall is only 10% compromised. Because all I'm repairing is the drywall. And we have to do that for every wall, ceiling, in and around inside that building in order to make that number come out. Then the math comes into play again back to, to what it's going to cost to get it to CO. And that's the reason why we've been so diligent in making sure that we don't exceed that and having contractors come in and try to pull permits. Because if you've got 4 units in a building, even 2 units in a building, we've seen it jeopardized. Where permits try to get pulled for kitchens and baths over the value of $50,000 each. If all you have left is $225,000 in value of that building, and it's going to cost about $60,000 to $70,000 to do the interiors on 2 units, and then we put a roof on it, do the quick math on 2 $50,000 improvements and see where you're at. Because what happens is the permit that gets pulled for that improvement now goes into the repair. Because right now, until we release buildings out here, every building in the Glades is considered a restoration building. We are systematically releasing them. We're working with the Architectural Review Board to where there's not an issue. Once the roof goes on it, we do a final 201, 205 palm, for example. 1 unit, small repair, get in it, get out of it, and as soon as I get the final on that, I'm releasing the building. And I really don't care what the people do at that point, simply because the numbers that we're doing in the restoration will reset back to 0. So anything that's on the buildings will have its full valuation intact when we walk out of here. But again, the CO is the important aspect. We're working with another contractor out here and putting together a package. The CO is a very simple item. They have to have, both bathrooms have to be functional. Now I'm being told possibly they'll let it go on 1. There has to be a swinging door on the bathroom. Toilets have to be operational. The sinks have to be operational. I don't care what they look like. We've gotten approval to use a product called Proflex as a sealer on the floor because they want a floor finish in the bathrooms. The unit floors don't have to have anything done to them. Tub has to be functional, shower curtain on tub or shower, and as far as they're concerned, water heater in and operational, sink base, sink, faucet, and the kitchen as far as they're concerned is functional, hence CO. No other trim has to be in. All we have to make sure is for the appliances that the hookups are all there and the valves are there. Now in the electrical, they want to make sure that this, what they call the trims or debicing. The switches, outlets, and covers have to be on. We're finishing up all the drywall. The drywall will have nothing more than a level 4 on it, so if there's a texturing that you want, your contractor will have to work with that. But again, it's a bare bones minimum to get a certificate of occupancy. The contractor I'm working with right now is putting together a checklist. And that company is doing a lot of the finishes out here, which we're not. They're putting together a package that's going to be very expensive to get it to CO. It'll have a checkpoint on what you need for the residents that aren't sure, what they're doing next. I found that there are some general contractors that have been retained that doesn't want to get in the middle of it. Therefore, I'll not approve any of their improvements until that building hits CO. And that means every unit in that building has to be CO. There's been some people upset because, proprietary, in year-round versus not, those are going back. If you are vacated or these people are vacated from that unit, proprietary doesn't mean anything. Without a CO, I can't let them back in. So no matter what happens, if the building isn't CO'd, I can't let them move back in. So, it's a hard truth, but that's kind of what it is. That's the reason why, we'll look at these buildings as we're starting to get more of the roofs. As all of you know, we put 3 more buildings online over there that's not even on the schedule yet. I worked with the insurance company. We had made a determination. The insurance companies are allowing us to use our professional, expertise along with the roofers to determine some of these buildings that are in dispute, what we will and will not do. The one word they do not want to hear is we will not warranty a repair. If we find that we can do a repair and warranty it, then they're happy people. But we're finding those that we can make reasonable repairs on, they'll be warranted if the glaze is in good shape, and we move forward. But 3 buildings unturned did go online this past week, and basically the roof's already been tore off them, I think, and going back on.
Go back online. Exactly. What is that?
In other words, they were in dispute. So we had no dates. If you remember the schedule, there were buildings that were listed but had no dates.
Okay.
And we just haven't updated the schedule to include those to have those dates. By the time I put those in the schedule, they will have already been done. But I'm going to go ahead and put them in the schedule.
And then they need to get a C of O.
The C of O will not happen until the interior has been signed off of. That's correct. We'll get a certificate of compliance through all the way through this. The CO is the critical part, and again, that's not what we've been retained to do. So what we're trying to help the residents, we're trying to help the Glades in getting these moving targets and getting these buildings to CO at a minimal impact.
So what about the cabinets and the kitchens and so forth? Do they need to be in or not
No.
be in?
All I have to have is an operational sink cabinet that was there. Some of these units had the base cabinets that were left in the sink. Again, with this other contractor, we're working with them on doing the hookups, putting them into where they're operational. Anything, and in fact, the contractor has already purchased an inventory of sink bases, sinks, and we're going to put them in long enough to basically get the CO and jerk them back out. That way the residents can go ahead with their improvements.
What about the flooring?
The flooring only has to be in 2 rooms, the 2 bathrooms. That's it.
Not the bedrooms?
Nope.
living room?
The certificate of occupancy simply means habitable. And habitable doesn't mean you have to have your appliances all operational and all your trim in, paints and wall, your window coverings. It's a very stripped down version of what that means. So like I said, the toughest part of it is your in-wall plumbing and electrical, because a rough inspection, which is all I'm required to get, is the wires are wire nutted, they're pushed in the box, and that's it. I can get a rough electrical. A final means that it's all deviced. The switches are there, the outlets are there. There's no way you can get shocked. That is that constitutes the final. And that's the number, again, we're working with this other contractor because I'm pulling a permit for all of it. So that's the reason why it's easier for me to work with that contractor and work with the residents at that point. This isn't, they're doing it as a conduit. I'm going to be doing it as the same thing. It's basically my permit, my CO. It's just, it's a minimal fee-based operation for administrative, and that's it. All we care about, both sides of it. Because the contractor that's doing this, he wants the other project. The units that are not contracted with them, they're doing it as a favor to us. But they're doing it on a fair and equitable pricing based on what we've determined. Many of you heard water heaters like $125 for a hookup or something like that in one of the town halls, or $150, whatever that looked like. You can't hire a plumber to do that because they can't pull a permit for it. So, we're doing it as a service. And that's about what it's going to cost us for electrical and plumber. We're in there, we have the permit, it's no big deal. So that's just a hookup fee. That's simply all it is. And we figured out that if we did that with, virtually the things that had to be done, all of you would get in a whole lot quicker than waiting for your contractors to hook up with us or, wait for us to do. Because, again, they don't want to go in and do what we're offering. They want to go in and do a project and get out. HVAC ductwork, that's on us. That's part of the Glades. So, the exhaust and the ventilation, hence the word HVAC or the acronym. It's your heating, cooling, ventilation. That's part of the Glades. That's part of what their restoration contract is. Yes?
Yeah, sorry if this sounds really naive, but this is to get the CO, it's getting buildings up to a very basic level of habitation.
That's correct.
But and here's the stupid question, that's not the end of the claim, is it, on the insurance?
It is for the Glades. It is for the Glades because you can't get the creature comforts that you want. The floor coverings, the trim.
Right.
And you can't get that unless we have a CO on the unit.
Right, but at that point, now for example, in our case, we've lost our lanai cage. We didn't have any apparent interior damage, but we did lose the cage to the lanai.
And you may be doing that battle for a while. We've not even been asked to even look at those. Because it's always going to be, the way that the state statute's written, there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of ambiguities in it. And basically, as far as the lanais themselves, it's argued that they were there when they were built. The structures were built, the porches, they just happened to get enclosed. But the roof extensions were there, the slabs were there, the surfaces were there. But again, they were just open porches, open patios, and they got enclosed. Now the argument comes back. And again, some were, some weren't. Some of them had lanais added. And I see the attorney's, his position on that, which is he feels that it needs to be part of the claim. It is an attached structure. You can't take it with you. There's where the word, your private provider, your private carriers all come into play. Is what can you take with you when you leave that unit?
Just further to that then, that's a fight that could be going on sometime. But is that a fight I'm going to be having, or that the Glades are now?
The Glades is very deeply entrenched in this one right now.
Right.
And I ultimately, again, there's going to be somebody that's going to cover that, whether, again, there are people that have hired Bobby, to handle some of their own claims. The carrier, and again, I see where this is. After Hurricane Charlie, many people that had cages, Hurricane Charlie did some significant damage, same thing. Insurance companies carried them on the private owners until the engineering changed after that, and the $10,000 cage went to $30,000 in a heartbeat because the building codes changed. The insurance companies were on the hook. The policies they wrote after that, they started excluding them, specifically excluding them. I see what Brian's saying, I see what the Glades is saying. Unless it is specifically carved out, you don't know that answer. And I've not seen an individual or resident walk in here yet that could answer that because their policies weren't written that way. So it's one of those that you may be doing this battle for a little bit, but unlike I guess the windows and doors took years. I don't look for this to get there, from that standpoint. But there are people taking it upon themselves to put their lanais back up at their own expense and rolling the dice on whether it's a reimbursable or not. And that's a tough one to call.
As long as Roger's on the same subject, as soon as our roof is done, I plan on having, we lost our cage as well, putting him the contract to put the cage on. It's already been, he's got a permit, he's ready to go. He's going to put the gutters up, as I did 8 months ago when I put a new one on. Now, if the cages aren't going to be approved, are we going to get credit for putting our own gutters up?
That would have to be a Bobby Sims question and and Brian question, because again, the gutters are ours. I've hired a company that we're going to start putting the fascia metals back on. The gutters they were painted. They'll be starting within the next week, 10 days, because we're starting to get these roofs wrapped up. So we will be doing the ones that's covered under the the conditions of the policy. But again, the lanais and cages, if the gutters came off with that, and that structure has to be there, again, what does this look like? And again, we're going to have to take a case by case. But again, the reimbursable on that, I can't answer the question.
Okay, this will be the last one. If they do finish the roof and come in to put the gutters on, I should just tell them to don't bother.
Let's take a look at it first, because that may be part of what we need to get through a final.
Okay.
So it may be a wasted money, but gutters aren't that expensive, especially on sections. But let us take a look at that before we make the call, because the inspectors are holding our feet to the fire, you might say.
Right.
Because every unit, every building out here, we're having to put clips in them.
Okay.
So we're taking sections of plywood out. We're putting, we're physically putting these clips in. We're photographing everything that now is new. An engineer is blessing it, signed, sealed letter. The county, what they want is that letter. There's a document, it's a wind mitigation document, re-roof mitigation document we have to have for each one. We have to have the valuations, which is what this is based on for every building. And the documents have to be filled out with those values, with what we did, the products that we use, the materials that we use, the photographs that we have, and the engineering letter and the county sign-off. Now, you will be able to get your wind mit.
Will we each get a certificate for the wind mitigation?
They will be on file and copies can be made.
Good.
You know, there's like 8 or 10 documents that goes in that packet. I'm not going to reproduce 24 photographs of each building. You know, we're going to do probably a couple from each side. The engineer's letter's there. The county agrees that it's there. And you know, again, those will go in separate books. I know people are starting to ask questions about the roofs that have been done. We're still waiting on documents on that. This is a tracking of the roofs going on out there right now. And these are the ones we have completed. These are the ones we're waiting for paperwork. Right now, I only have 6 buildings that have the entire documentation on pulp. You know, in turn, I can see has been requested. So as I get those, again, I will book them. And I'll start making binders for the glades as we get them and turn them over to them. You know, so that way they've got them over there.
Marty, I think you only need one wind mitigation, what do you want to call it, for the whole building.
Possibly, yes, but
Because
each
I just
owner...
bought a place and they had one for the building and it was accepted by the insurance company.
Yeah, and if that's the case, there'll be one on file and whoever, you know, like I said, because if you've got 4 different carriers in a building or whatever that is, they're going to want it for their files too. So at least it's you can run duplications of it. It doesn't matter, you know. But there'll be a master file here, and then at the end of it, we're going to probably put them electronically and give that on a either disk or a thumb drive to the glades. You know, they're still getting 14 3-ring binders at the end of it. You know, but you know, as far as collapsing that to close, that's probably what they're going to prefer to have.
I have a question about the air conditioning vents. I'm on ground floor in the building. Apparently the roof was fine and there was no damage to any of the drywall until about my caretaker said until about 10-15 days later, the electricity came on and the air comes on, and then it rained hard for 2 days. And then I got water that looks like from what they monkeyed around with a vent that came into one bedroom, ruined the floor, and got out in the living room and ruined a piece of furniture. I know those are my problems, but I've been here since January, and there's been really no significant rains, and I'm concerned that at some point when it rains hard and is windy, that, you know, like a month from now or 2 months, water will again come into that bedroom and nobody's here.
There's only 2 ways it's going to get in. One's through a window and the other one's through the roof. If I'm putting a roof on it, it will be coming through that.
Well, it came in and they told me it was the vent, or because I don't know, they pulled the vent off and stashed it in the hole. And it was only damage.
On the roof?
No, in my bedroom.
On the sidewall?
The inside wall. But there was water in there, and it wasn't for the first 10 days, but then the floor got ruined and got out in the living room and messed up. I know the damages are my problems. I'm just concerned about...
Well, if we are going in there, you know, on the drywall repairs, it's something that we'll look at, and then again, that becomes, again, hence the word ventilation, HVAC.
Yeah.
What happened along those lines, it's hard to say.
Yeah.
Somebody apparently ripped the drywall out of that, and when they did...
And I assume it got wet from the bottom up, but when I came here, there was no musty odor or anything. Whatever they got it out right away.
That's probably the only thing they did really well. They got too much out, but they did really well.
Well, maybe they got too much, but it was a relief not to smell.
Well, we get up into that and we see it. We'll have to make it by code. We have to make sure that that's functional.
Okay, but I won't be here, because I'm going home the first part of April, and nobody will be there.
We got your keys?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, as long as we've got keys, got access. I mean, we go and do the assessments, and that's we're being very vigilant right now, taking a look at the units. I mean, what many of you don't know, is our firewall crews will be starting, right at the end of the week. The county's going to allow us to put the permits on those after the fact, and we'll get the inspections. Because it's a crew that we can run straight through. I don't have to have a roof, for them. And we've got, 30 or 40 of them at least we have to do. And then the drywall, we have been given permission by the county, though it is commercial, everything requires a permit. But with their blessings, we're doing small drywall repairs. It's just a sheet or two on the units that we can get out. I can't see tying a unit up for 7 days for a 7-minute repair. And that's kind of what some of this stuff is. Go back in, sand it out, and let them have it back. So the county's allowing us to do that.
Well, even when the drywall is taken down, so is the molding or woodwork, the base. Now that'll be replaced, right?
By you.
Do I have to put that in myself?
Yeah. Yeah, that, hence the word, like I said, we're just, in the way that the statute's written, we have drywall insulation, rough electric, rough plumb, the appliance connections, heating, cooling, air conditioning, and exhaust.
But you don't want to do any of that molding around the base or around doors, so then I better get that done.
Now, just, somebody get lined up, and somebody be in touch with you, over the next month or two. Like I said, the contractor that's working with us on this stuff, he's picked up a few of the projects along the way for the finishes, and it's actually worked out well. He's more than fair. He's well known out here. So, and like I said, it's just, Brandon is he's trying to follow my lead on where we're kind of going right now, on these units and where our sweep is going to happen going through, the rest of the complex. As I said, the drywall, we're doing some miscellaneous repairs. We're staying on top of the tarps and things because, again, there's some of these buildings that are, at least a month out, even though they're on schedule, and if they've got an issue now. So we're getting with Todd what needs to be done there, Bobby. The interior repairs, probably next week, we'll start looking at pulling permits, again, starting where we started the building. And our drywall insulation people can ramp up based on our volume we pick up. But again, we're going to come up Palm, we'll finish up Turn, come up Palm, do Glades, and do Section 11 will be our next one. And then we're trying to figure out a way to get some of these sections, 5 and 7, those are in the middle, depending upon performance. Because, the schedule that we put out was very aggressive, to try to get 74 buildings up and done and inspected by the second week of June. So, we started the end of February, 1st of March. So we're taking a project that, realistically had a 180-day outline just for the roofs, and we're seeing if we can collapse that. So,
back to that certificate of occupancy. You said that they just need a basic toilet to be working and a sink and whatever. Now, is that the owner's responsibility to pay for, or is the Glades paying? That's a good question because there's two avenues here. Velocity had gotten a little, again, a little excited. There are toilets that are missing. There are toilets that are broke. We have been instructed to buy basic toilets, put them back in, to make them functional, and keep track of that separately. But the attorney wants that list because no one could validate whether, how, they know it wasn't broke when it got pulled out, it got broke due to how it was pulled out. So the toilets are kind of a moving target right now as far as the residents are concerned. If they're out right now sitting in the middle of the floor, we will put them back in because I have to have something in the bathroom floor. Now, if the bathroom floor's in, you have no problems with it. It just needs to be reinstalled. Then you'll need to get it installed. But if it's not, then, like I said. At the owner's expense.
Yes. So bathtubs, many of them got damaged as well. Some of them are chipped, some of them are cracked, some of them are, the ones that are chipped, again, we were asked to keep an eye on, to basically track. We're looking, there's companies out there that will glaze a chip. So other than replacing a tub. Because to replace a tub, I've got to rip everything out of the walls and everything else. So if there's a reasonable repair, they look good. It's become the people that do this are doing a really nice job. So we're looking at that avenue on the ones. Shower bases, again, it's one of those that now you've got shower bases, tiles been ripped out, the shower pans. So we're balancing that act as well because the drywall that's around it, the tile, part of it's destroyed. We're having to look at each unit and try to evaluate what needs to be done. Again, the demolition, maybe it should have been done because the bathroom's got it out and the tile was left. Can we butt up against this and make this work? It's going to be a case by case as we look at them. Shower bases, if they are destroyed, they're going to have to come out. And what happens next, because most of the pans themselves that go in are molded to set in those spaces, and they come up, the tile comes back down on them. But it's going to CO, and the shower's been ripped out. Okay, what we're looking at now is other than getting into that expense, to beautify it to make it the way you want, we can use a 48-inch fiberglass base, knock down unit, temporary glue it up. Hopefully nobody takes an elongated shower in it because it's not going to be well sealed, but it'll look pretty, for CO, and then it gets ripped back out. So, there are some things that the residents themselves, the units that are more extensively damaged, you've got some challenges ahead of you.
And we're trying to get out of our end of it as quickly as we can. Yes.
I may have heard this wrong, and maybe you don't know this answer to this question, but we were in a previous meeting when the attorney was here, and I thought he said something along the lines that in the state of Florida, there's a law which they enacted that the condos need to be put back to in the original condition they were at the time that they were purchased. Now, literally, that means that the association or the insurance company or somebody is responsible for replacing the kitchen cabinets and so forth and so on. Did I hear that? Is that right or wrong?
There's the state statute itself was written after Hurricane Charlie in 2004 because of the limits of condos, apartments, what that looks like. Because right now, like I said, there's a lot of ambiguities within the state statute because it's how you split it out. After 2004, you all would have been responsible for your heating, cooling, vents, exhaust, and everything else. And the state didn't think that was right. So they started putting things in there. After Hurricane Charlie, I had done a huge association, and they were responsible for the trim work. You know, going back to a basic, whatever that looked like. Well, again, the missing parts that are within the way the law is written on insurance, leaves that for interpretation. And it's the reason now the question goes back. Your private carriers or your private insurances, they're coming in and they're not having any issues with putting trim back in. They're not having issues with cabinets. They're not having issues. So that basically defines what the state statute says.
Okay.
They know what they're supposed to cover. But there's some gap in there. And the gap that we had challenges with here, after 2004 is pretty cut and dry. As far as electrical is concerned, obviously we never were responsible for light fixtures. But we had to be able to, we had to device them. Now that's since changed. But again, in 2004, I didn't have to do anything with HVAC. But they're looking at putting the package together as a contractor coming in and doing what has to be done. HVAC has to be done before it can be drywall and insulated. And I can't be waiting on you to get your HVAC done in order for me to get, so everybody else can get their CO. So they put together, a package there that basically takes it to where the CO, is obtainable for a nominal impact. Because everybody's got different tastes. I mean, back when I was pulling the permits on this place, there were some $70,000, $80,000 kitchens and bathrooms out here. So I mean, there was some money spent. And the first 50% rule that got brought into play, usually there's a 5-year reset. So that means everything that got done prior to that event worked against the 50%. And what we started seeing is there was a number of buildings out here that were going to be at risk, highly at risk. The municipality has the authority to set that reset, to the best of, their best means. So they simply, from the date of the event, they put your valuations back to zero, like you'd spent no money at all. Because, with the roofs, you have a number of roofs, the windows and doors, again, kitchens, baths, I mean, all I saw was a nightmare, getting ready to start. County steps up, they go back to zero, but they warned us. Everything from that zero date on every building, still complies 50% on both sides. The integrity and the financial. And everything that gets pulled comes part of the restoration. So again, your contractor pulls a $50,000 permit. That is not an improvement until such time that building is released. That is part of the restoration dollars. And that's the reason why they're asking us to watch it so close and giving us little emails. There's not too many days that go by I don't get an email, from the county. We've got this. Legally, can they hold up a permit? It's hard to say. They're doing it for the best interest of the building because a lot people just don't understand sometimes that could cause that trigger. And it's the same way with the Architectural Review Board. I get updates on those, and some of the stuff I've got no issues. I can pull up any of these on all 12 sections out here and tell real quick what's going on in it. And if I don't have an issue with the building, I'm not going to stop you. And even if I haven't put a roof, and a roof's the only thing I've got to do, I'm not going to stop you. So, it's we just need to make sure that we're systematic about how we release them and get everybody back to where they want to be. So, and next year, you all sitting down about this time having a different meeting about something else and leaving me out. Yes?
request to allow the assessor to come and review the condo, is that?
Pardon me?
We had an email request from the assessor to come and look at our unit to make.
Yes, sir. That's part of, yes,
Good or bad?
that's good.
Okay.
Because what's going on right now is as a backup. And again, there are buildings out here, don't get me wrong, there are buildings out here that are at risk. What they're doing is they're putting together a certified appraisal on the different buildings and how some of them were prior to the storm, or get an idea of what they were like prior to the storm. Yeah, so they're trying to get elevated appraisals in case we don't hit this threshold. Because you got to keep in mind the numbers I'm working off of come from the tax collector over a year ago. You know, last July, whatever they said. So I had to go back on your November taxes. You know, and again, I know that they're 15–20% off. And I'll get some latitude on that. But the appraisal, it's like I said, it's a good thing. There's probably 8 or 10 or 12 we're going to look at out here. And what my guys have done is they picked some of the best examples of what to look at from the appraiser. And they're supposed to be, I think it's Wednesday, I think they're going to do that. They're supposed to look at the units. Yes?
I have a question. A couple weeks ago, I got a call from you people about coming in to putting the walls and stuff up, and we had to have everything out. Is there a date that...
We're working on that now, because like I said,
they're going to let us know ahead of time, because I have to get a pod, so I don't want a pod sitting there for no reason.
The Glades won't let you put a pod out there.
So what?
The Glades won't let you put a pod out.
For 2 weeks, I was told.
Have they changed that?
Not to my knowledge.
Yeah, we'll get a clarification on that, because
No, because I had asked at the office about getting a pod, and they said you can only have it for 2 weeks. And they told me that it's going to take longer than 2 weeks. It's just that I don't want to take my stuff out and have to wait another 2 or 3 weeks, you know, and pay for it while you people aren't going in there. Understand?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I would clarify.
Will they let us know ahead of time? I mean, even if I have to move it, I don't care.
No, I'll let you know. Yeah, as we're starting to put together the interior schedules, because I've got one more little hang up here on the county, and there's energy calculation codes that have changed. Mm-hmm. And if I get into one, I have to insulate more than 2/3 of the unit. They call it the blower door, code, and it's a different process. It has to be certified for insulation now.
Our whole place has got it.
Then you're going to have to, we'll have to have a certification on yours. Yeah, it's things that we've been doing for years. They just want another reason to inspect us and charge, get charged for somebody to certify and say, yeah, because there aren't that many people that are certified in that just yet. But it changes the, energy calculations for the building of airtightness, and that's all it's about. Yeah, like I just had a whole 8-page thing on it that showed up this morning. Mm-hmm. I'm shaking my head just thinking, well, you guys have got too many hands in this fire.
It's maybe too general a question, and I'm sorry if it's not your area exactly, but I'm sort of sitting there watching to see what's going to happen, because again, with reference to the lanai cage. Mm-hmm. But how long after the event of the actual catastrophe can one then start to pursue a claim, say against my own insurer?
I would get with Bobby on that, but again, the Glades is working with that lanai.
Yeah.
And I would talk to Bobby on that one because,
I'm much happier for the Glades with the power of the negotiations, the whole setup, to be addressing it rather than puny.
Yeah, I think that's the reason why a lot of people have retained Bobby, because within the next 2 or 3 weeks, he'll have the package, if you will, for the interiors and all the other stuff, kind of put together. All the drafts will be done, all the stuff for the interiors, and then he'll be picking up the gauntlet on the individual private claims.
Right.
Right now what he's doing is putting all his efforts, in the Glades claim itself, so we can get you all done. But beyond that, a number of people I've spoken to out here have already contacted him, and I guess he's got a number of people he's going to be working with individually, on that. He'll go after that as aggressively as he's going after this. And a lot of people hire public adjusters, after the fact, especially if there's a standoff. And again, going back to what's said before, I happen to agree with Brian. They're attached, they belong, they're structured. and it has a negative impact if they're not fixed,
Right.
on the structure. So, but I'm not the one that goes in the courtroom and, so I like my little world. My little trailer. So, anybody else? Yes?
After everything is said and done, hopefully in another year or two, all right?
No, don't do that to me. I keep telling everybody, I've got a happy dance plan. It's right after the first of the year.
Anyway, will the Glades insurance and the homeowner's insurance cover everything, or is there going to be an assessment if everything is said and done?
That's a question I cannot answer. I know that the Glades legal counsel and the public adjuster is doing everything in their power to get everything collected and paid for that's in your behalf. I know that many of you run into a situation with your private carriers, on the internal. I mean, you sit there and you walk into a gutted unit and your adjuster is sitting here saying, okay, here's $4,000, on one that I know is $35,000. And they do that. There's been a couple that were a little bit more generous than that. They walked in and it's only about 50%. There are three things within the private insurance company. They'll not pay you what they call the P&O, which is 10 and 10, 10% profit, 10% overhead. And what they'll do, they'll put on what they call recoverable depreciation. So it drives the amount of the check down. They're forcing you to spend the money. They're forcing you to spend money, especially if you've got replacement clauses within your policies. And they'll reimburse within reason. So you have to make sure you're all in line with your carrier. But what they specifically will and will not cover, is where the argument comes into play.
On that question about an assessment, chances are there's definitely going to be one of some value. We have no idea what that value is going to be. Part of the cost is the removal of all the trees that were on the buildings, that came down in the yards. That came to close to $50,000 just in our section. That will be part of an assessment that will be spread among our section. There was some work when the trees came down, pulling up the irrigation lines. Those had to be repaired. There was a contract put out. It was all fixed. According to section, we will be assessed a certain amount. There are deductibles on every building. That we are trying to work down with the monies that we're getting from the insurance company, and we have some money in reserve for roofs that we might be able to use too. So we're trying to hold it as low as we can, but there are certain items that there was no budget for, because if we didn't have the hurricane, we wouldn't have been spending the money. So there will be an assessment. Probably not going to see it. My opinion, not official. I would say you probably aren't going to see something till September, October at the earliest, because it's going to take us that long to get all the figures, get all the repair work done before we can put the prices together.
Okay, the question, well, the assessment is about $357 based upon your numbers here of the $50,000 for the trees. Okay, it's a rough number. Next question I have, though, is we have all this repair done on the roofs, and we're going back, I guess, to a 0 point now in terms of putting money aside for roof replacement as time goes on. Are there monies available in that now that can be put back into mitigating some of the expense of these assessments coming up?
To the best of my knowledge, Florida law does not allow that. If you have money in the reserve account and you have items that they're for, it can only be spent on those items. So we couldn't take money from the extra roof. If we had, say we had extra money in the roof repairs, or roof replacements, we couldn't take that money and pay for the drainage. Right? We couldn't take that money and pay for the tree repair, because that's not part of your reserves. Right now we're in the very beginning stages of doing a complete new reserve study. And part of that reserve study is going to be taking into account all the roofs that are being totally replaced. And with the money that we have in the reserves, we'll be checking. But one of the things is in the reserves, every section does not have the same items in their reserves. Like we do not have in our reserves for doors. So we're trying to get the doors done without doing an assessment, but taking little money that was left over last year. We're doing some doors now. We got some more going. But it's once we get the new reserve study done, then we'll know how we
just
fit.
got a $50 or $55 bump in our assessment for section 4.
Correct.
Okay. So now, as you reevaluate the expenses or the reserve fund contributions, so in theory, that should now be less, and should therefore lower our association dues.
The reserve amount to go into the roofs might be less, but there may be something else that is brought up that may be more. So until the reserve study's done, we don't know. Off the top of my head, I think it's a little over $130 a month that goes into the reserves to pay for the painting of the buildings, the roofs, the maintenance inside the buildings, for the stack pipes and that type of work. So there's a number of issues that is covered by reserves. But until we get the complete reserve study, you could throw figures all over the place, but I'd rather not give those numbers because I don't know what they are.
Has Glades got enough cash flow to pay for all of this before the assessments come out?
Yes.
Good.
We took out the $4.5 million line of credit. So, plus we already have insurance payment, which is pretty good considering that there's not been any deductibles paid to date. And with Brian Cross working closely with Bobby Sims, the idea is that, in partial answer to your question, is there may be money in respective sections for roofing that can offset some of the costs associated with a particular section. Some sections have more than others, but that's being looked at by the attorneys and in accounting, and trying to evaluate the best application of the funds that we do have available to us. We have enough cash flow right now to continue moving forward with all the roofing and interiors. So we're not gonna slow him down just because we run out of money. So we're in pretty good shape right now.
Since the storm, and the lanais came off, there's a certain amount of debris on the west side of the turn in the forest. And we have a boom truck with a 50-foot reach. Can we not arrange that they go in there and lift these large pieces out? I don't know who to address it to.
It's not ours. It's not ours.
It's lanai debris.
They've gone in and cleaned some of that already, though.
Have they?
No question.
Yeah. But
They have gone in and cleaned some of that already. I was told that Phil has had some of that workers go in to take some of that stuff out.
Okay.
Legally, it's not our property.
But it's our material.
Correct, but when Lakewood's material came onto our property from the hurricane, it was our responsibility to clean it up.
yeah, I've been told that we're not required to go in there and clean up that wooded
I
area.
would think we should be responsible enough to do it.
We've already cleaned out the canal that runs back there behind there. And I'm happy to be in touch with the county at some point down the road.
It'll be there for 50 to 100 years if we don't remove it.
Very possibly true.
Well, eventually, this could be grown over.
It still looks better than when it was Hobo City.
Oh, for sure.
It'll look even better after this week when I get that fence repaired.
Oh, good.
They'll be here this week.
The end of the month, right?
He's here today.
25th, today's 25th.
So why can't they make this?
So he'll be working around. You'll see them out there all week long, I believe.
Right. You would think they would be doing it.
I do say it's frustrating that it's not happening quicker, but the fellows you've got working on the roofs on Turn Drive are fabulous.
Yes, they are.
Really are.
Appreciate it.
Okay, it's a good bunch of guys, and you'll see it ramp up here big time here in the next few weeks. But yeah,
They
they're.
line up after the, oh, great.
Yeah, that's, like I said, thank you, and I'll pass that along to them, because like I said, the screening process for who we brought in was very strict. Many reasons. Safety being one, the other ability to handle the job, professionalism, their tracking paperwork, paying, their surroundings. And this is what they do. Like I said, they're a national company. And I've got another national company stepping in next week. So,
It's frustrating for us as owners, though. It doesn't look like anything's being done, although it is being done. And when we try to get answers, you can't get answers.
Well, it was a lot of, and I can't say that we were trying to get the same answers as you. That's what made it difficult. And every time we put something out there, the county changed it. So we were going back and forth. Okay, what's my real loss look like? What aside from the roofs? Tell me what my loss looks like. On how to get there. And up until last week, or last week, maybe the week before, we finally taken all of this and collapsed this down to what the CO looks like. And this comes down to a number of meetings with the county. And the county is conceding on a lot of stuff to make this CO, because they realize that there are a lot of hands that are involved in this. But back to your point, today's the 26th day of March. We tore our first roof off over here on the 25th day of February, and we're into 16 roofs right now. So, and that was a slow start. And then we've got another 40 of them lined that gets kicked off here in the next 2 weeks. So, the guys have proven that they can do what they do. And, my guys are, they're running around like crazy now, because we've got to bring 2 more people out at least. So we start going into the interiors of these now, and getting that laid out. And I need at least 1 more of me. So that my 7 days at least gets backed off to 6. So,
We can clone you.
Clone me? There's days I'd like to see that, especially my other half. But she's used to it. Yes?
Question of interest. When we talk about the elevation, what is the elevation? Official level? How far below am I?
About half a foot.
Okay. What is that number?
Oddly enough, if you look at the glades as an overall, it's interesting because I don't know how they did this. It's 7 foot unless you're up in Quails. And Quails is 8. So somehow or another, theirs is a foot higher than all yours. In the middle of the, in the middle of the.
And what's illegal?
Well, anything below that's illegal.
Anything below 7?
Yeah.
You'd have to above sea level, is that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you'd have to be at 7.6 in order to, you could do anything you wanted.
Yeah.
Elevation is the killer on FEMA. And FEMA changes it.
Yes, they do.
They change about every 5-6 years, because I'm from Indianapolis, moved to Cape Coral. I saw it change twice in the city of Cape Coral, and never could figure out how the Edison Estates in downtown Fort Myers, their flood elevation was 3 foot higher or 3 foot lower than mine, because water doesn't flow that way. But again, it's where the connections are at.
I'll touch on that because I'm an engineer, I do flood certifications back home, and we've done some, and they're out of the flood zone, and then they change the elevations, and the insurance company wants them done again. We go back, and all of a sudden, the buildings are in the flood zone. And off the record, whenever FEMA needs extra money, I think, which is about every 5 to 7 years, they change the flood elevation, which means now they can go out and tell everyone, oh, you owe us flood insurance money, unless you can prove you're not in the flood zone. And that's where I think most of the issue is.
The 770 acres of the Glades has a big impact on that fee. That's the reason why they're watching this so close, because it's one of the largest single developments. They're watching it so close, and they want to see nothing happen here. So, like I said, the county, may not have been your friends in the past, but they are today. But, the situation remains, again, outside of single family and duplexes, this is a commercial project. Therefore, they get frustrated because you're a residential owner. You should be able to hire somebody to come in here and put your floor down, but not the county knowing it. And so we're dancing around this very gingerly because anything over that starts to also press that threshold means fire sprinklers, because they can't build this anymore without having it sprinkled. And there's not enough infrastructure out here to sprinkle this. So there's just all kinds of things that we're having to be aware of as we move through it. So it's like I said, the county wants to see that the Glades succeed, and they're working with us. We have 6 people within the perimeters, one of them being a FEMA expert, that is assigned specifically to the Glades and us. So, and the emails wear me out. But it is what it is. So, anybody got anything else? Yes.
The apartment that's above our home, we haven't seen anybody come and go. It's vacant. How do we find out what kind of damages has been done to that apartment?
We don't want to worry.
I need to know building and unit number on that, because I need to know if we've been in it. So.
Go to your trailer and.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll be going there after this meeting. But I'd like to know if one of my guys has been in that unit. If so, because we're going to have to, the Glades has the legal authority to go into anything that we've not been able to get into.
One thing, because they're 4-unit buildings and bigger, it's considered commercial as far as building permits are concerned. The zone that the Glades is located in is actually a residential area zone.
That's right.
So we are residential, which means the shopping center has to put up their barriers.
Really?
Yes, because county regulations state that when a commercial is next to a residential zoned area, they have to put up a barrier for viewing.
They have to put up buffers.
Yeah, so that will be done, and I know they're trying to give them a little time to get their insurance money in to do that. Now, this afternoon at 3, there's going to be a town hall meeting on probably a boring subject, the Palmetto course. So if you'd all like to come back, and I commend you, it just shows the class of Section 4. It was a great session. I think everyone learned a lot. And I'd like to thank Marty for being here.
I appreciate your patience and working with us. Like I said, we're taking up a lot of your parking out there, but I've not heard one complaint about parking.
Use them all.
See you at 3 o'clock.
Thank you.